Okay, so picture this, right? A world where books are like these super rare, crazy expensive things.
Hmm.
Only, like the super rich, the elite, can even, like, get their hands on one.
Right.
That was life, though,
Okay.
before the printing press.
Yeah.
And that's what we're diving into today. It's
Yeah.
a deep dive into the printing press.
It's one of those things, everyone's heard of it, but
Right.
the details are fuzzy.
Exactly. So we're going to uncover its origins, its impact,
Hmm.
and maybe debunk a few myths along the way.
It's not as simple as like Gutenberg invented it, end of story.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And we've got
Yeah.
some really interesting sources to guide us, each giving a different take on like how this thing changed the world.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, to go from, like you said, books being this incredibly rare thing to
Okay.
what we have now, it's remarkable.
Absolutely. Now, most people, when they think printing press, they think Gutenberg.
Right, Gutenberg,
Yeah.
yeah.
But what if I told you this story begins like way earlier,
Okay.
over 1,000 years ago,
Wow,
on
okay.
the other side of the world?
Hmm. Well, our sources point to, China, actually, as
Yes.
the kind of the real birthplace of printing. Specifically, a technique called woodblock printing.
Woodblock printing. Okay, so for those of us who, weren't around 1,000 years ago,
Sure.
what exactly is woodblock printing?
So imagine you carve an entire page, but like mirror image, onto a block of wood.
Whoa, the whole page on one block.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. The skill it took, the precision,
Oh, I bet.
and the results were amazing. There's this Buddhist text, the Diamond Sutra,
Okay, yeah.
printed in 868 AD. One of the oldest examples of this we have.
868 AD. Gutenberg wasn't even like a twinkle in anyone's eye back then.
Nope. And it wasn't just like a one-time thing. The Chinese were printing calendars, math charts,
Really?
guides for weddings, funerals, all sorts, using wood blocks.
So they're way ahead of the game. But then it gets even more interesting because we've got this guy, Bi Sheng,
Okay, Bi Sheng, yeah.
lived in China around the year 1040. And get this guy was centuries ahead of his time. He invented movable type.
Movable type. Now that is a game changer.
Total game changer. But here's the thing. It wasn't made of wood
Uh,
or metal.
oh. What was it then?
Clay.
Clay. That's unexpected. Why clay?
Right. You'd think like wood is more obvious,
Yeah.
right? But our sources say Bi Sheng found that wood, it was just too inconsistent.
Ah, I see. The texture, the grain.
Exactly. And it absorbed moisture, so not ideal for printing. Clay, though, once it's baked,
It's durable, smooth.
perfect for holding the ink.
Yeah.
So they had the tech for movable type way back then.
Fascinating, but it didn't really catch on the way it would later in Europe, did it?
No, it didn't. And it's funny because woodblock printing, it actually made a comeback in China in the late 1200s, thanks to this guy, Wang Chen.
Wang Chen. Okay, what did he do?
He published this book on farming called The Nungshu.
The Nungshu.
Yeah.
Catchy.
Right. And get this, it's believed to be the world's first mass-produced book.
Mass produced. So we're talking thousands of copies of a farming manual all over China.
Spreading that agricultural knowledge.
It really makes you wonder, what if Bi Sheng's movable type had D taken off back then? How different would the world look?
It's crazy to think about. But here's the real kicker. Wang Chen's Nungshu, this masterpiece of Chinese printing, you know what?
What?
It made its way to Europe.
No way!
Yes. So as Europe is on the verge of its own printing revolution, they get a glimpse of what China had already accomplished.
Wow, talk about irony.
Right. And it shows how connected the world already was, even back then. But with that in mind, with that early printing in the East, let's shift gears to Europe, where the name Gutenberg finally enters the picture. So Gutenberg, right? He's like the poster boy for the printing press.
He is, yeah, but like we were saying, it's not as simple as him just inventing it out of thin air.
Right. More like he took what was already out there and kind of revolutionized it.
Right. Exactly. Gutenberg, he was working in Mainz, Germany in the 1400s, and he was a real craftsman, a tinkerer. Understood how things worked, how to put them together.
So like, if we could peek into his workshop, what are we seeing?
It would be buzzing, I imagine. Gutenberg, he had a whole team of skilled workers. It wasn't just him alone. And the process, it was pretty ingenious, even if, at its core, it's just pressing ink onto paper.
Okay, but what made Gutenberg's operations so different, so revolutionary?
Well, for one, he really perfected the use of metal type.
Instead of wood or Bi Sheng's clay.
Right. Gutenberg used an alloy, Mostly lead, tin, and antimony, actually.
Lead. Interesting choice.
Each metal had its purpose. Lead was cheap, plentiful, easy to work with. Tin made it tough, long-lasting, which you need for something that's going to be used over and over.
Makes sense. But what about the antimony?
Ah, that's the secret sauce. Antimony gave the alloy hardness, made the letters print sharp and clear. This metal type, it was miles ahead of clay, could print thousands of copies and still be good as new.
No more carving every single letter by hand, huh?
Exactly. Huge for mass production. But then, of course, you need ink that'll stick to metal. Gutenberg developed this oil-based ink, perfect for his new type.
And that was different from what, like, the Chinese were using.
Oh, yeah. Theirs was water-based, mainly for woodblocks. Gutenberg's oil-based ink, sharper, cleaner printing, much more consistent.
Got it. So we got durable type, special ink. What about the press itself? Is that something totally new too?
Well, earlier presses, they relied on people, pushing down, using their own strength. Gutenberg, he took the screw press, something already used for, like, winemaking, actually.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yep, he adapted it to printing. This screw press, it meant even pressure across the whole page, every time.
Which is why those Gutenberg Bibles look so crisp, even today.
Exactly. Speaking of which, you can't talk about Gutenberg without talking about the Gutenberg Bible.
It's like his masterpiece, right?
Pretty much. Printed around 1455, they think he made about 180 copies.
180. Man, that's a lot for back then. And he printed those on what, paper?
Some on paper, but a lot of them on vellum.
Vellum. That's like fancy cat skin,
Yes,
right?
high quality stuff. But here's the thing. Gutenberg, the guy who basically gave the world the printing press, he died a poor man.
Seriously. You're kidding. Why? What happened?
Lawsuit. And it's a story with a lot of blanks, even now, all these years later.
Okay, so this lawsuit involved Johann Fust, right? Gutenberg's investor.
That's the one. See, printing, it's not cheap, even after all Gutenberg's innovations.
Yes.
He needed money to get started. Borrowed a hefty sum from Fust, 800 guilders, which back then...
That's a serious chunk of change.
Oh, absolutely. But a few years later, Gutenberg went back to Fust for another loan. Another 800 guilders.
Wow, so he was in deep. What did he need all that money for?
Some think he was expanding, maybe even building a second press. Whatever it was, that second loan, it was his downfall.
Because Fust called in the debt?
Yep. 1456, he took Gutenberg to court. Accused him of misusing the funds.
And Gutenberg couldn't repay.
Nope. So he lost the lawsuit. And with that, he lost everything. Presses, type, the whole operation. Fust took it all.
That's brutal.
To make matters worse, Fust, along with his son-in-law, Peter Schoffer, they kept printing. Even took credit for the printing press in their own works.
Oh, man, that's just cold. What was Fust thinking, though?
Hard to say for sure, but he must have seen how big this could be. Especially after the Gutenberg Bible, right?
True. That was a hit. So what happened to Gutenberg? Did he just give up on printing?
It doesn't seem like it. He may have kept going, maybe in Bamberg, but those later years, well, they weren't exactly his glory days.
It's a shame, really. The guy who revolutionized printing.
It's a reminder that even the best ideas don't always mean riches for the person who came up with them. But while Gutenberg's story might have ended quietly, the printing revolution, that was just getting started.
Gutenberg's story, it's kind of bittersweet, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
He might not have died rich, but man, what a legacy.
Talk about an impact. His workshop, that was just the spark, really.
It's amazing to think, like that one workshop in Mainz set off this chain reaction.
It wasn't just him, though, right? It was those workers he trained, too. Those guys, they took that knowledge and ran with it.
They spread the word, literally.
Yeah.
Became like printing evangelists.
Exactly. Set up shop all over Europe.
Yeah.
And Venice became like the printing capital.
Yeah, canals, art, printing presses. Who knew? What made Venice so special, though? For printing, I mean.
It was booming, trade, commerce, all that. Perfect ground for a new industry to take root. Plus, they had some real visionaries there. Aldus Manutius, for one.
Okay, Manutius, what do you do?
Well, he's the guy who gave us italic type.
Italic, you mean like this kind of italic? So fancy.
The one and only. But it wasn't just about looks. Manutius, he wanted to make books, smaller, more portable.
Uh-huh, so italic let him cram more words onto each page?
Exactly. Early version of the paperback, really.
Genius. Smaller books, cheaper books, knowledge for everyone.
Exactly. And Manutius, he was a stickler for details, wanted beautiful books, not just readable ones. He even gave us the modern semicolon. Did you know that?
Get out, punctuation pioneer. It's funny how these little things, right? Typeface, a semicolon, They change how we experience the whole text.
It's true. And as printing took off, it wasn't just about individual guys toiling away anymore. We start to see these publishing houses popping up.
Publishing houses like the OG Penguin Random House.
Exactly. Families, like the junta in Venice, they controlled everything. Printing, distribution, the works. They had networks all across Europe.
Media moguls of the Renaissance. Imagine having that kind of reach back then. But it couldn't have been all smooth sailing, right? What kind of problems did these printing pioneers run into?
Oh, you know the usual. Piracy was a big one even back then.
People were making bootleg copies. No way.
Oh, yeah. Plus, printing wasn't cheap. You needed wealthy patrons to back you. And then you had to hope people would actually buy all these books. Imagine the pressure.
It's kind of funny to think about, right? Book sales back in the 1500s. But, okay, beyond the business side, the printing press, it really shook things up, didn't it? Knowledge, religion, science.
Totally. Before, it was all about who could afford a handwritten book, who had time to study. Printing blew the doors wide open.
Made knowledge accessible for everyone.
Right. And it wasn't just books. Pamphlets were huge, scientific texts, even Martin Luther and his famous 95 Theses.
Which, boom, the Reformation.
Exactly. All made possible because of printing. Imagine if Luther's ideas had stayed handwritten. No Reformation.
Wow, yeah. It's hard to even wrap your head around. And more people reading means literacy shoots up, right?
Oh, absolutely. Knowledge wasn't this elite thing anymore. It was for anyone who could read. That's the legacy right there. The printing press opened up the world, and, well, here we are.
It really makes you think, would we even have VE, the internet, without printing coming first?
It's the foundation in a way, isn't it? The printing press, it's all about mass communication, spreading information. That's what the internet is too, just on a whole other level.
So from those first wood blocks in China, to Gutenberg and his metal type, to...
Well, everything that came after, what a journey. If you're anything like me, you're probably itching to see some of these early printed works.
Oh, for sure. There's nothing quite like seeing the real deal.
So if you can, do a little digging, track down some images online. You won't regret it. It's like a window into the past. And a good reminder that even now, in the digital age, the printed word, it still has that power, you know?
Absolutely. It's something tangible, something that lasts.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the printing press. Until next time.